When I was starting out in my early 20s, I didn't come from money, and I definitely didn't have it all figured out. I had to learn, sometimes the hard way, what actually works and what's just noise. That's why in this video, I'm breaking down a step-by-step wealth plan that every 20-year-old needs. By the end, you'll know exactly how to budget, save, invest, and set yourself up for financial freedom without guessing or wasting years making mistakes. Most people in their 20s struggle with managing money because they simply don't know where it goes. They get their paycheck, spend on rent, food, fun, and before the month is over, there's nothing left. The problem here isn't that they aren't making enough. It's that they don't have a system to tell their money where to go. Without tracking, it feels like your cash disappears into thin air, leaving you stressed and wondering why you never make progress. It's like trying to build a house. Without a blueprint, you can buy bricks and wood, but without a plan, nothing solid gets built. The solution is to master the basics by budgeting and tracking every single dollar you earn and spend. That doesn't mean cutting out every coffee or living like a monk. It simply means being intentional with where your money goes. The easiest way to start is by following a simple rule like the 50-30-20 method. 50% of your income goes to needs, 30% to wants, and 20% to savings and investing. Or if you want to be even more structured, you can use a zero-based budget where every dollar is assigned a purpose, even if that purpose is fun money. The key is awareness. Once you start seeing patterns, you realize that little expenses, like food delivery, streaming subscriptions you don't use, or impulse Amazon buys, are eating away at your financial future. By tracking and budgeting, you can make small adjustments that compound over time into thousands of dollars saved and invested. Let's put this into perspective with an example. Imagine someone in their early 20s earning $2,500 a month after taxes. They don't track their spending, and by the end of the month, they have nothing left. They feel like saving is impossible. Now let's take that same income and apply a basic budget. Rent and utilities might take $1,000. Food and transportation take another $700. That leaves $800. If they decide up front that $500 will go toward savings and investments and $300 toward fun and entertainment, suddenly the money has direction. Over 1 year, that $500 monthly savings adds up to $6,000. If they invested in a simple index fund earning 7% annually, in 10 years, that single habit could grow to over $82,000. The only difference is that they tracked and planned instead of guessing. The example becomes even more powerful when you think about small daily habits. Let's say someone spends $15 a day on takeout lunch and coffee, which adds up to about $450 a month. If they cooked at home and cut that down to $200, they free up $250 every month. Put that money into investments starting at age 22. And by 30, that single habit could add more than $30,000 to their net worth. People often underestimate how powerful small adjustments are because they don't see the impact right away. But over time, the results are massive. Another benefit of budgeting is the peace of mind it gives you. Money stress often comes from uncertainty, wondering if you'll have enough for rent, if you can afford that trip, or if you'll have anything left over for savings. When you track and budget, that stress disappears because you already know the answers. You're in control, and that control gives you freedom. It doesn't feel restrictive. It feels empowering. Most people in their 20s ignore the importance of having an emergency fund because they assume nothing major will go wrong. They feel young, healthy, and confident that their paycheck will keep coming. The problem is that life rarely goes according to plan. Cars break down, medical bills pop up, jobs get cut, and unexpected expenses come when you least expect them. Without a financial cushion, you're forced to turn to high-interest credit cards or loans just to survive. That debt snowballs quickly, leaving you stuck in a cycle where every paycheck goes toward paying off past emergencies instead of building a future. It's not just a money issue, it's a stress issue. Living without an emergency fund means every surprise expense feels like a crisis, and that constant anxiety holds you back from focusing on your bigger financial goals. The solution is simple but incredibly powerful. Build an emergency fund before doing anything else with your money. An emergency fund is a savings account dedicated solely to unexpected expenses. Nothing more, nothing less. Experts usually recommend starting with at least $400,000 as a starter cushion and eventually working your way up to 3 to 6 months of essential living expenses. That way, if you lose your job, you have a buffer that buys you time to figure things out without spiraling into debt. If your car breaks down, you can fix it without panicking. The key here is accessibility. This money shouldn't be tied up in investments where it could lose value in the short term. Instead, it should sit in a high-yield savings account where it earns some interest, but is always available when you need it. Think of it as financial insurance. You hope you never have to use it, but when you do, it saves you from disaster. Here's an example to make this real. Imagine two friends, both 24 years old. Sarah has an emergency fund of $3,000 and saved up. Jason doesn't. One day, both of their cars break down and the repair bill is $500. Sarah pays the mechanic with her emergency fund, then slowly rebuilds her savings over the next few months. Jason, on the other hand, puts the bill on his credit card with a 20% interest rate. If he only makes minimum payments, that $500 repair could end up costing him over $12,000 by the time it's paid off. and he'll still feel the stress of having debt hanging over him. The difference between Sarah and Jason isn't income or luck, it's preparation. Sarah's emergency fund gave her options, while Jason's lack of one left him trapped. Another example comes from job loss, which is becoming more common in today's economy. Let's say Emily earns $3,000 a month and loses her job unexpectedly. Because she has $900 in her emergency fund, 3 months of expenses, she doesn't have to accept the first low-paying job she finds. Instead, she can take the time to apply, interview, and secure a role that pays more and aligns with her career goals. Without that cushion, she would have been desperate, forced to settle for less, and possibly stuck in a position that delays her financial growth for years. Her emergency fund didn't just cover bills, it gave her the freedom to make better decisions. Building an emergency fund also creates a psychological shift. When you know you have a safety net, you approach money with confidence instead of fear. You're no longer derailed by life surprises because you already prepared for them. That preparation reduces stress and allows you to focus on growing your wealth instead of constantly putting out financial fires. Even starting small makes a difference. Saving just $20 a week builds over $1,000 in a year, and that's often enough to cover many of life's little emergencies without turning to debt. Small, consistent contributions build momentum. And before long, you'll have a buffer that protects you no matter what happens. One of the biggest obstacles that hold people in their 20s back from building wealth is carrying high interest debt. The problem is that most people underestimate how dangerous this kind of debt actually is. Credit cards, payday loans, or even personal loans seem harmless at first. After all, you only borrowed a few hundred or a few $1,000s. But with interest rates of 18%, 20%, or even higher, that debt multiplies quickly. What starts as a $4,000 balance can turn into $2,000 or $3,000 if you only make the minimum payments. For many young adults, debt feels like a constant weight on their shoulders, draining not just their bank account, but also their motivation to save or invest. Every time they think about putting money aside, they realize the interest piling up on their debt is wiping out any progress they could make. The stress of knowing you owe money grows heavier over time, and the longer you carry it, the harder it becomes to break free. The solution is to prioritize eliminating high-interest debt as fast as possible, even before focusing heavily on investing. While investing is crucial for long-term growth, it doesn't make sense to put money into an account earning 7% when your credit card is charging you 20%. By paying off debt first, you're essentially giving yourself a guaranteed return equal to the interest rate you're no longer paying. There are two main strategies to tackle this: the debt avalanche and the debt snowball. The avalanche method focuses on paying off the highest interest debt first while making minimum payments on the rest, saving you the most money over time. The snowball method focuses on paying off the smallest balances first, giving you quick wins that keep you motivated. Both approaches work, but the key is to pick one and commit fully. Once you've cleared high-interest debt, the money that used to go toward payments can now be redirected into savings and investments, creating momentum toward real financial independence. Take an example of someone with $5,000 spread across 3 credit cards at interest rates of 19%, 120%, and 25%. If they only make minimum payments of $150 total each month, it could take them more than a decade to pay off the debt, and they'd end up spending thousands extra in interest. But if they adopt the avalanche method and throw every extra dollar at the card with 25% interest while paying minimums on the others, they can cut that timeline down significantly. Imagine they put an extra $300 per month toward the debt, bringing their total monthly payment to $450. In less than a year and a half, they could be completely debt-free, saving themselves thousands in wasted interest. The discipline of focusing on one card at a time makes the process more manageable and accelerates their progress. Here's another example that highlights the psychological side. Suppose Alex owes $800 on one card, $500 on another, and $4,000 on a third. Using the snowball method, Alex attacks the $800 balance first, paying it off in just a few months. That small win boosts confidence and creates momentum, making it easier to stay motivated while tackling the bigger debts. Once the smallest card is cleared, Alex rolls the payment into the next balance, and the snowball effect builds. Within a few years, all the debt is gone, and what once felt overwhelming now feels like victory. The important part isn't just the math, it's the shift in mindset. Getting rid of debt makes you feel lighter, freer, and more in control of your financial future. The ripple effect of eliminating high-interest debt can't be overstated. Once those payments are gone, you unlock a powerful ability to save and invest aggressively. For example, if someone was paying $400 a month toward credit card debt, that same $400 can now go into an investment account. Over 10 years, at a 7% return, that habit could grow to over $72,000. What was once a drain on your future becomes fuel for your financial independence. By attacking high-interest debt head-on, you're not just solving a short-term problem. You're laying the foundation for long-term wealth. One of the biggest missed opportunities in your 20s is failing to invest early. The problem is that most young people think investing is something you do later in life, once you're earning more or have everything else figured out. They tell themselves, I'll start when I make more money, or I'll invest once I'm debt-free and settled. The reality is that waiting costs you the most valuable resource you have in your 20s, Time. Investments grow through compound interest, and compounding works best when it has decades to build. By delaying, you're not just missing out on a few dollars, you're giving up tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars in future growth. Many people also avoid investing because they feel it's too complicated, too risky, or they're scared of losing money. That fear keeps them sitting on cash in a savings account earning almost nothing, while inflation eats away at its value every single year. The problem isn't lack of opportunity, it's lack of action. The solution is to start investing early, even with small amounts, and let time and compound growth do the heavy lifting. You don't need to be an expert or pick individual stocks to win with investing. In fact, the simplest approach often works best, putting your money into low-cost index funds or ETFs that track the overall market. Historically, the stock market has returned an average of 7% to 10% annually over the long run. And by starting in your 20s, you give your money the longest possible runway to grow. The key is consistency. Even investing $100 or $200 a month into a retirement account like a Roth IRA or a 4-to-1 DIKE can snowball into a massive nest egg over time. Automating your investments ensures you stick with it, regardless of market ups and downs. The earlier you start, the less money you actually have to invest to reach the same goal compared to someone who waits until their 30s or 40s. Here's an example to show just how powerful this is. Imagine two friends, Chris and Taylor. Chris starts investing $200 a month at age 20 and keeps it up until age 30, then stops entirely. Taylor waits until 30 to start and invests the same $200 a month all the way until age 60. At retirement, Chris, who only invested for 10 years, ends up with more money than Taylor, who invested for 30 years. Why? Because Chris's money had an extra decade to compound, and those early dollars had time to multiply. This demonstrates the incredible advantage of investing in your 20s. Waiting even a few years can dramatically shrink the final outcome. Another example is to look at how small amounts add up. Suppose you invest just $150 a month starting at 22. By the time you're 60, assuming a 7% average return, that small habit grows into over $300,000. Increase that to $300 a month and you're looking at more than $600,000. What feels like small, almost insignificant contributions in your 20s become life-changing sums in the future. The numbers prove that the earlier you start, the easier wealth becomes. The psychological benefit of investing early is just as important. Once you begin, you shift from being someone who spends first and saves later to someone who prioritizes their future. It builds a sense of discipline and confidence, knowing that your money is working for you even while you sleep. You stop worrying about timing the market or chasing quick wins and instead focus on the long game, which is the real key to building wealth. By starting in your 20s, you turn investing from something intimidating into something normal, a routine part of your life. That consistency, combined with time, creates financial freedom in a way nothing else can. One of the biggest mistakes people in their 20s make is relying on just one source of income. The problem is that most people assume their job will always be enough, but a single paycheck leaves you vulnerable. If you lose that job, your entire financial stability disappears overnight. Even if the job feels secure, it usually has limits on how much you can earn, and raises don't always keep up with inflation. Relying only on your salary means your ability to build wealth depends on someone else's decisions. Whether your employer decides to give you a raise, whether the economy stays strong, or whether your industry continues to thrive. On top of that, having only one income source makes it much harder to save and invest because every expense competes for the same paycheck. This creates a cycle where you feel like you're always working hard but never really getting ahead. The solution is to create multiple streams of income while you're still in your 20s, when you have the time, energy, and flexibility to experiment. Multiple income streams don't mean you need to start 5 different businesses overnight. It can be as simple as building one side hustle, freelancing, learning a skill you can monetize online, or even creating passive income through investing. The goal is to have money coming in from more than one place, so if one stream dries up, you're not left scrambling. Over time, these smaller streams can grow and compound, giving you financial freedom much faster than relying on a single job ever could. For example, someone who works a 9 to 5 might start freelancing in the evenings, renting out a room on Airbnb, or investing in dividend-paying stocks. These may not seem like much at first, but as they grow, they provide a safety net and eventually can surpass the main paycheck. The most important part is starting small and being consistent. Here's an example that shows the impact clearly. Imagine Sarah works full-time making $3,000 a month. She decides to start tutoring online for a couple of hours each evening, earning an extra $500 a month. At first, it feels small compared to her main job, but that $500 makes a huge difference. It allows her to max out her Roth IRA, invest in index funds, or save toward a down payment on a house. Over a year, that side hustle brings in $6,000. If she invests it consistently with an average 7% return in 20 years, that extra income could grow into more than $20,000 to $40,000, all because she added one simple stream of income that didn't depend on her employer. Another example is building passive income through something like dividend investing or creating digital products. Let's say Alex writes an ebook and sells it online. At first, sales are slow, maybe just $50 a month. But as time goes on and he markets it better, that grows to $300 a month in consistent passive income. That may not replace his salary, but it means $3,600 a year that he doesn't have to trade time for. Combine that with his full-time job and other side hustles, And suddenly, Alex isn't just surviving off one paycheck. He's building a portfolio of income streams that make him more resilient. If he loses his job tomorrow, those extra income sources soften the blow and give him breathing room to recover. Creating multiple streams of income also changes your mindset. Instead of thinking only as an employee, you begin thinking like an entrepreneur and investor. You start looking for opportunities in your everyday life to monetize skills or create value. That mindset shift is often more valuable than the money itself because it sets you up for long-term success. Having multiple streams also reduces financial stress because you're no longer fully dependent on one boss or one company. It gives you more freedom to make choices like negotiating for a better job, traveling, or taking risks you couldn't if you had no backup. In your 20s, when your expenses are often lower and responsibilities fewer, it's the perfect time to build these extra sources of income that will pay off for decades. One of the reasons many people struggle to build wealth in their 20s is because they don't have a long-term plan. The problem isn't that they don't want financial freedom. It's that they don't know what it looks like for them personally or how to get there. Without a roadmap, money decisions become random. One month they save, the next month they spend it all. Sometimes they invest, but then they pull it out when they need cash. This lack of direction creates inconsistency, and inconsistency kills progress. It's like driving without a destination. You waste time, energy, and fuel without getting anywhere meaningful. People in their 20s often think they'll figure it out later. But later usually means missed opportunities, wasted years, and financial regrets. Not having a plan leads to living paycheck to paycheck even as income grows because there's no bigger strategy guiding decisions. The solution is to design a long-term wealth roadmap that aligns with your personal goals and values. A roadmap doesn't have to be complicated. It simply gives structure to your financial journey. Start by defining what financial freedom means to you. For some, it might be retiring early. For others, it might mean having enough money to travel freely, buy a home, or simply live without financial stress. Once you know the end goal, you can work backward to figure out what steps are required. This plan should include clear milestones, building an emergency fund, eliminating debt, investing a set percentage of income, creating multiple streams of income, and setting targets for net worth growth at different stages of life. When you map it out, the process stops being overwhelming. Instead of guessing, you're following a step-by-step path where every action has a purpose. The roadmap becomes your guide, helping you make smarter choices and stay consistent over decades. Here's an example to put this into perspective. Imagine Daniel is 22 and just started working full-time. Without a plan, he spends freely, saves when convenient, and invests occasionally. By 30, he realizes he has very little to show for nearly a decade of work. Now compare that to Emily, who creates a wealth roadmap at 22. Her first milestone is saving $1,000 for emergencies, then building it up to cover 3 months of expenses. Next, she commits to paying off her credit card debt within 2 years. She decides that starting at age 24, she'll invest 15% of her income every month into a retirement account. She also sets a goal of creating a small side income stream by age 26. By 30, Emily has a strong safety net, zero high-interest debt, investments compounding for 6 years, and a second income source that gives her extra flexibility. Both Daniel and Emily had the same opportunities, but the difference was that Emily had a plan and Daniel didn't. Another example is long-term planning for retirement. Let's say Alex maps out that he wants to retire at 55 with $1.5 million. Instead of just hoping it works out, he calculates how much he needs to save and invest every month to get there. By starting at 25 and consistently putting away $600 a month into index funds with an average return of 7%, he stays on track to hit his target. This roadmap keeps him disciplined because he knows exactly why he's saving and what the payoff will be. If Alex didn't have that plan, he might spend more freely in his 20s and 30s, assuming he'll save later, but that delay would make hitting his retirement goal nearly impossible without massive sacrifices. The roadmap protects him from procrastination and keeps him focused on the long game. Designing a wealth roadmap also has a powerful psychological effect. Instead of feeling lost or anxious about money, you feel in control. Every decision becomes intentional because you can measure it against your plan. Should you buy that car? Does it fit into the roadmap? Should you invest in this opportunity? Does it align with your long-term goals? This clarity makes money less stressful and more empowering. Even when life changes, as it always does, the roadmap can be adjusted, but you're never starting from scratch. You always know the direction you're heading, and that sense of purpose creates confidence and motivation to keep going year after year. First, it all starts with mastering the basics, budgeting and tracking every dollar so you know exactly where your money is going. Second, building that emergency fund gives you a safety net for life's unexpected surprises. Third, you have to eliminate high-interest debt fast because it's one of the biggest barriers to building wealth. Fourth, investing early lets compound growth work in your favor and saves you decades of stress later on. Fifth, creating multiple streams of income protects you from relying on just one paycheck and speeds up your financial growth. And finally, designing a long-term wealth roadmap keeps you on track, turning small daily decisions into big results over time. If you put these 6 steps together, you'll set yourself up for a level of financial freedom most people only dream about. If you found this helpful, make sure to subscribe, drop a like, and comment your biggest takeaway.